Didn't work. Now we're going to try this again. There's no audio. So, have you ever experienced this yourself? A lot of times when I'm coaching with people, this is a recurring problem that a lot of the people that I coach have is they have had failures in their life. They had a goal that they went off and gone out and done, and then they failed and they fell flat on their face and they didn't accomplish what they wanted to. Have you ever experienced this where you had a goal, you knew that you were supposed to go down a certain direction, and then when you started to, you failed or you fell flat on your face, you lost everything. You lost the momentum, you lost the influence, you lost the connections, whatever it is, and then you took a lot of time either beating yourself up or trying to think about what your next steps are. This is literally across the board something that I see with so many different people. When I talk with other coaches, they deal with this, and it's a common human thing that when we fail, we struggle to pick ourselves back up again. And then oftentimes we footnote it. When you see a lot of successful people, they footnote it as their journey. Well, I fought hard and got back up again, and that's all you ever hear about that process. Nobody really breaks down how to pick yourself back up again from a failure when you experience it. And yet it's the number one thing that I think that affects people, that affects whether you're going to be able to be successful or not, is learning the skill and the art of picking yourself back up again from failure. People that are ultra successful shift it even more, and this is for later on, to where failure actually becomes a good thing. They look for failure. They try to make things fail in order to learn what's not working. Now I get it. Failure is painful, especially if you put all your chips into one thing and it didn't pan out and you spent a lot of time and energy. You don't want to waste that time and energy again. You don't want to experience that excruciating pain that happened from things not going how you wanted. But what we have to learn is that we have two choices. Either let the failure defeat us, we can sit around overthinking what our next steps are, or we can get back up again and move forward. And what your goal really is to shorten the amount of time that you spend sitting in the failure. You see, a lot of people, they spend a lot of time in that failure, that post-failure zone, thinking about, well, what could I have done differently? Well, what should I have done differently? Well, what should I do next? And they spend a lot of time in there because they don't want to touch that hot stove again. Failure is kind of like touching a hot stove. So they want to learn, okay, how do I get close enough to the stove but not touch it again? Could you imagine? Have you ever touched a hot stove? I have. And I learned quickly not to do that. But could you imagine if you never cooked again because you touched a hot stove and it burned you? There's tools and there's mechanisms and there's things that we have to learn and techniques that we can still get close to the fire without burning ourselves. And I believe that that's what separates people that let their failures defeat them and those that pick themselves back up again to move forward, is learning how to shorten the amount of time between the failure and picking themselves back up again, and then processing through what those things are. I experienced this myself multiple times in my life where I reached a certain level of success and then boom, flat on my face. Went to jail, lost a job, you name it. Different things that happened to me that were the result of my own personal responsibility, personal choices that I had made. And now, boom, I'm at the beginning again, and I got to figure out how to pick myself back up again. And the biggest thing that helped with that, number one, is forgiving myself, not punishing myself, believing in myself so much that no matter what anybody tells me, no matter what happened, I'm unshakable in my conviction that I know where I'm headed. And then getting help from other people around me saying, hey, what do you think about this? Finding wise counsel and mentors, people that have walked the same journey that I've walked, people that have struggled, that have gotten the hard knocks, that have been beaten up and beaten down, and asking them how they did it. And that's one of the biggest things that helped me, is finding people that I could bounce those ideas off of, to ask them, hey, this happened. I experienced this situation, this very specific situation, and I got into conversations with people that had experienced similar situations and asked them, how did you break out of that? How did you go to the next level? And so this is one of the biggest things that we need to do. I think there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of fear behind when we lose something, when we fail to pick ourselves back up again, and we believe that we're in it by ourselves to pick ourselves back up. When the truth is to get back up again, to be tenacious, to rise up quickly. Again, speed is important. Shortening the amount of time from failure to your next adventure. Reducing the amount of time from the time you failed to the time that you get back up again. And that's your choice and your responsibility. What you do in the gap between there is what determines how you go from thing to thing and progress further. Life happens where we fail. The only thing that determines whether the failure defeated us or not is our ability to pick ourselves back up again. And so forgiving ourselves, getting help from people, for me, 6 months with a professional therapist talking once a week about those issues did so much more than anything else did for me. And then reading books on the topics of what I was struggling with: personal responsibility, how to lead people. I lost a contract because I struggled with leading people. I was not a very good leader 2 years ago. And so I dove into every single book I could learn on leadership and talked to every single successful leader that I knew and asked them, grilled them with the questions that I had about leadership, about how to be a good leader. And now I can say that that's actually something that I get whenever I'm in organizations, get complimented on now as well. You're really good at leading. How did you learn all of this? Well, by failing quite a few times. And I'm still learning, by the way. I don't know everything. Anybody who claims that they know everything, run fast from them. Do not follow a guru that claims that they know everything and have accomplished everything. That's going to be a huge piece of advice for some of you. Find people that are willing to admit that they're in the process, that they're learning through their failures with you, and can share their experiences. Those are the types of people that you want to mentor you. Those are the types of people that you want to speak into your life and help guide you and direct you. When you fall flat on your face, to pick yourself back up again. Learn to forgive yourself. Learn to forgive whoever else is responsible. And let me say this. Yes, people do things that influence how certain things go. But we're the ones, after that happens, who's responsible for picking ourselves back up again. They're not responsible for picking you back up again. Can there be a decision maker? Let's say you worked for somebody. They're a boss that fired you discriminatorily. That's a bad situation. It wasn't your fault. But it's your job whether you let that defeat you or not. That's what I'm saying. And so no matter what has happened in your life, no matter what you've experienced, you are not to blame for it, but you are 100% responsible for what you do afterwards. Not punishing yourself, not beating yourself up, establishing that self-belief, being consistent every single day with what raises up my self-belief in me. What are those rituals every single day that you feel the most confident when you do those things? I have certain things that I do every single day that raise my level of confidence so that then when I go after my goals, when I build my business, I'm operating from that high state, from that highest, most productive level of who I am, my best self. What are those things for you? Find those for yourself. Maybe you don't know what those are. I didn't know what they were a couple years ago, and then I discovered them. One of them that's going to probably shock some of you, that actually helps me, is video games. I actually play video games maybe a half hour a day, and it helps me just kind of process through things that I struggle to process through. And it's something that I've always done, and I actually used to do when I was younger a lot, and now I do now as well as an adult in business. That might discredit me to some people in business, or that might help people see that I'm being real and authentic. No matter what your thing is, no matter what you're dealing with, no matter what you're going through, it is possible for you to pick yourself back up again, to rise again, to not let your failures defeat you, to shorten the amount of time, to close the gap between failure and your next adventure. Now, if you're somebody that would love to talk through and process through how to do that strategically for you as a business owner, you can schedule a free 15-minute call with me on my website, jeremiahkrakowski.com. We can talk on the phone about your situation, or you can send me a DM. I also respond to all my DMs. I'd love to talk about your unique situation. I can't claim to know and by ESP to read your mind and know what your situation is, but I'd love to at least maybe give a little guidance along the way through my experiences or point you in the right direction. So we'll talk soon, everybody. Have a good one.